Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Brett Amron.
Wow, there was the pregnant pause, the look at each other. Who's going to say first?
I wanted to see if you were going to
I was going to jump in
initiate
there and finish the conversation.
You have a question for me, or you want me to ask you one today?
Go ahead.
All right. If you could swap places with one fictional character, who would it be? A fictional character.
Where did you get that from? What conference did you go to get that?
It's I heard it asked somewhere. I don't remember. Somewhere.
A fictional character. Wow. Boy, that's a hard one. I know you've thought about it, so you have an answer.
Well,
so it's really unfair. But
when it was asked in the room I was in, the majority of people chose a superhero.
Yeah.
So
the Invisible Man.
But it could be someone from a movie.
It could be invisible.
Invisible Man.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll think about some of my favorite movies of all time, like Shawshank.
But you wouldn't.
But I wouldn't want to swap places with anybody in that. Dufresne, actually, was very smart and came out on top. Anyway, I don't know. I honestly, that's a tough question. You stumped me.
I stumped you.
You stumped me.
Note this day in history.
Yeah, let's mark this day in history. I don't know.
Amron has been.
What's your answer? Because I know you thought about it. He cheats, so he has.
I think the easy answer is Superman, but I went with Aquaman
because you want to swim.
Well, underwater, but also communicating with the fish.
You don't do that already.
He communicates with. I do, but they don't really.
They don't communicate back.
I'm talking to them. They just don't talk.
I always tell my family when I'm talking to the dogs, I'm like, if the dog talks back, you need to go see somebody.
Right. Exactly.
Like they speak with their eyes and their movements, but if they ever utter a word, then we need to talk.
2 words.
Yeah, we need to
love and food.
Yeah. So that good question though. Maybe on a future episode, I will come up with an answer.
Right. Well, maybe our guest.
I already am Superman, so
I'm not.
I stumped.
I don't even know what to say. I don't even know. You're
I knew that would.
In a lot of ways, you are a man of steel.
I knew that would quiet you down.
All right. Our guest today is Kendall Coffey. Kendall is a founding partner of Coffey Burlington and one of South Florida's most prominent trial lawyers, known for handling high-stakes litigation, white-collar defense, and complex commercial disputes in state and federal courts. He's also a former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, where he led one of the nation's largest federal prosecution offices and oversaw thousands of criminal and civil matters before returning to private practice. Throughout his career, Mr. Coffey has served as lead counsel in significant high-profile cases, including multi-million-dollar professional liability disputes and international financial matters, resulting in 8-figure judgments. He's consistently recognized by Best Lawyers in America, Florida Trends Legal Elite, Florida Super Lawyers, and the South Florida Legal Guide, including being named Miami Lawyer of the Year for professional malpractice. And in addition to his courtroom work, he is a frequent legal analyst and lecturer. He has taught at the University of Miami School of Law and has authored multiple publications on trial advocacy and litigation strategy. Welcome.
Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for the very gracious introduction. I could say most of that about both of you, one form or another. But
I was not a former U.S. attorney.
That's for sure.
Neither was I, but yes.
Well, that's why you both look much younger than your ages.
Thank you for being here.
Well, my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me.
So how did you get to law school? Like, we can skip ahead, but if there's something in your youth or what, like, why law school? Why did you get there?
I like to start with birth, by the way.
Birth.
Well, a lot of good things that have happened to me have been just luck.
Yeah.
So
all the successful people say that,
but it's true.
I know there's definitely some luck. But you got to put yourself there. Yeah.
And you got to be kind of humble about how things turned out.
Of course.
So in that case, I wanted to be a broadcast journalist.
Okay.
And I was in the College of Journalism, School of Broadcasting at the University of Florida, which had a very good
great school. Go Gators.
And I got incredibly discouraged by my professor who told me I had the voice of doom. and that's sort of a non-starter for a TV journalism career.
Wow.
Ironically, I ended up doing like a lot of interviews on TV over the years. So
interesting.
I guess the voice of doom.
Voice of doom.
Voice of doom.
So
at least he didn't say you had a face for journalism.
A face for radio.
For radio.
Yeah, he
and
probably
not TV.
thought that as well.
Wow.
And I was discouraged. And I tell people, don't be discouraged by what a single professor, even a couple couple professors tell you, but all of us are, because we're looking for that one clue or signal about our future career.
I mean, if you get 3 professors all telling you the same, then maybe you listen. Right?
Yes, then you're doomed.
Right.
But in that case, so I did something, just a filler job for a while, although it was kind of fun in its way. But
what was that?
I
Something
was
fun?
a deputy law clerk for the clerk of the courts.
Oh,
And all I did all day was microfilm documents. And you will never do anything that is quite so repetitious as that, because there were 3,200 pages to be microfilmed every day by pressing a little button down on the floor. But I did it. And you know what was good about it? I really liked the people I worked with. And it struck me afterwards, if you're working with nice, upbeat, positive people, you can do kind of mundane things, and it's still pretty cool overall. So I applied to law school, not just one law school, wasn't really looking around and didn't, count on getting in, but I got into the University of Florida and loved it. That's where it began. It was a great time to be in law school in the sense that it was a great market for law grads those years.
When was this? What years would this be?
I tried to scrub my graduation years from everything on the internet.
Jeff went right to it.
I mean, you're saying it's a great time.
For purposes of
We won't tell anybody. We won't tell
anybody. And
Right.
I graduated in 78.
Okay.
So that was a great time to get into law.
And were you from Miami or Florida?
Mostly. And I say mostly because I was an Air Force brat. My dad retired out of Homestead Air Force Base, which was a very significant base at the time.
Yeah.
And I graduated Palmetto High School in 71.
Wow.
So kind of local as much as you see around here. But I love law school. Things got lucky from there. I didn't have lawyers in the close family, so I stumbled into Greenberg Traurig for exactly the reason I would tell your listeners, don't take a job just because the starting pay is good. I mean, Greenberg blew everybody out in the year before me because they got 3 of the top graduates from the University of Florida by offering $20,000 a year in salary. So
And that was the top.
that was the top anywhere in Florida.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're trying to compete with the New York firms. But anyway, the buzz was high decibels. A bunch of us from Florida and other places went to Greenberg, and that was a great environment that we could talk about as well. And right before I began at Greenberg, I clerked for a federal appeals court judge. And that was a delightful and very positive experience.
That was here at 11th Circuit? Or?
He was adding to my ignorance about so many things. He was in Noonan, Georgia.
Oh.
I thought that federal appeals court clerks were what was then
The Fifth Circuit.
the Fifth Circuit.
Fifth Circuit, right,
Okay,
that's a good
expert
point.
here.
Yeah.
Fifth Circuit.
right.
Right, good point.
We got a couple things we got to
Right.
redact from this. But from the Fifth Circuit, you'd hang out in New Orleans. Not so. You'd go
Right,
there
no.
for the sittings when court would sit in New Orleans. But the rest of the time, our offices were in Noonan, Georgia. Perfectly charming town.
But not New Orleans.
Not New Orleans. And anyway, that's how it got started.
But you got to travel to New Orleans periodically, so that was probably fun as
We
a law
got there
clerk.
a number of times,
Yeah.
and yes, the food was incredible.
Yeah.
And the per diem was pretty generous for federal law
Nice.
clerks back then.
And the
Nice.
experience of clerking for a federal appellate judge. Let's talk about that and what impact that had on you.
Well, it's a fabulous experience. I mean, sometimes folks will say better to clerk for a district judge because then you're getting the trial court experience. But the federal appeals court was just an exciting environment because you're helping the judge write opinion for at the time 6 states, and sort of a role in impacting the law. And I just loved it, and had a very, very nice guy that I was working for, the late Louis R. Morgan, who was a huge baseball fan.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, I had to study up on the Braves, which were a struggling franchise back then.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, you said you were humble about it. You said you stumbled into a top law firm and a circuit level clerkship. So we know that you obviously did well in law school. Must have been pretty impressive. But how big was your class at Greenberg? Because you said they were growing and it was a hot time. Like how many people are we talking about?
I'd have to count them up, but like maybe 8 to 10.
Oh, okay. So it's a pretty small class. And then,
But remember, Greenberg was in the 40s.
right.
And Mel's pledge was 80 by 80.
Oh, yeah.
So that was.
Oh, yeah.
So
and
you
we
guys were in
barely
growth
made
mode.
80 by 80. And of course, now they're, 1,800 by.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, they've taken off
Oh, yeah.
astronomically. They're a premier firm. But at the time, 8 to 10 people was a big number.
And did you know what kind of practice you wanted to do at that time? Or
I just heard the buzz around that was you wanted to be commercial litigation. You don't want, quote,
Right.
insurance defense, which I probably had backwards because you get a lot more experience at that time in insurance defense than in commercial.
Get to try a case with like a piece of paper or right? They tried cases back then. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, this might have been before some of your listeners' time, but the great Tom Scott was at, one of the elite insurance defense firms. And I think he tried like 100 cases by the time he became a circuit court judge. He started out on the state circuit court.
Yeah.
So there was plenty of experience back then.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get so much of it
today.
I encourage people to go to the state attorney's office or the public defender's office if you really, really want trial experience.
Yeah. Now, how far into your career were you when the opportunity to serve as a USA came up, U.S. attorney?
That was when Clinton was elected president, and
92.
He was elected in 92, so I served from 93 to 96, and becoming U.S. attorney is a political process.
Sure.
I mean, the guy I replaced was tremendous, Roberto Martinez. There was no reason for me to replace him. But I was a Democrat and knew Clinton's brothers-in-law. I'd met them along the way, and I've been early Clinton supporters. Reality-wise, those factors matter in terms of appointed positions. Once you're appointed, you sort of say goodbye to all your friends, kind of.
Really?
I mean, most all of us did and do.
Right.
But the process of getting there is a partisan process.
So political appointment, but non-political position in your mind.
Absolutely the traditions of the Department of Justice then and hopefully again.
Yeah. So tell us that process, what that was like going through that process to get appointed, the selection process and what that was like for you at the time. Obviously, it's a difficult process. There's a lot to do, a lot of pins and needles waiting to figure out if you're the one that's appointed. Obviously, you have to, at some level, you have to have the experience, you have to have the credentials, but then the connections and everything sort of get you there as well.
Well, back then we had a commission, which we had until recently, within the past few years. But Connie Mack and Bob Graham got along well, and they put together a judicial qualification commission that also reviewed U.S. attorneys and United States marshals. And so you applied initially to that commission, and then there would be finalists forwarded, and the finalists would be personally interviewed by, in that case, the decision maker was Bob Graham. There had been a Republican president. The decision maker would be Connie Mack. So that was the process. And in theory, the White House could push back. But generally, there was a huge amount of deference extended to the senator who was of the same party as the president's state. So that was the process back then. And I had the privilege of seeing it from the other side during the Obama years and the first couple of years of the first Trump administration, because I served as the chair for the Southern District of Florida in the Federal Commission during the Obama years. So I got to see it on both sides. And the process was somewhat similar. We would post, for example, Southern District, Federal District Judge. People would apply. There was a basic process for applying and would be interviewed by the entire commission. And then the, quote, finalists would be interviewed by the senators. And it depended. Sometimes both senators, it was Nelson and Senator Rubio for most of my years. Sometimes it would be both senators. Sometimes it would just be one senator. But it was a good process. I can honestly say it. I think my experience was the same as others before me, that I never got a call from anybody on Nelson's behalf or on Rubio's behalf when we were reviewing the applicants. Not once. And I was the commission chair for the Southern District of Florida. Once we were done and forwarded our recommendations, again, it was done without any political outside influence.
Right.
Once we were done, then, of course, it was a different process. And in both stages, it was appropriate for people to call members of our commission, send letters. Sometimes that had more impact than others. But, we try to make it as open a process as possible. The process is a little different now, and I'm not conversant with the details.
Right.
But I assume that it's a matter of the senators, both of whom are Republican, of course, in the White House, coming to terms on appointments. But I'm not really as involved, nearly so involved as I used to be.
So going back for a minute, before you got into the processes for the appointment of the U.S. attorney, you were an assistant U.S. attorney at the time? No. You were a private practicing lawyer.
Practicer. And
was it always something you thought about doing?
I was encouraged to do it.
Okay.
And got encouragement from a number of sources, and that's what took me there. The other two finalists were extremely qualified. One was a guy named Dick Gregory, who was just an outstanding career prosecutor, and then the other was, of course, Bob Martinez, who is the incumbent. But again, I think, I like to think that it was something other than my party affiliation, but I think that was the factor that tipped the scale.
And is there a process? I know with the presidents, there's always typically a process where they get together and they talk. Is there a process where once you're appointed, you and Bob Martinez, in your case, sit down and break bread and talk about, hey, this is what's going on in the office. These are some things you may want to look out for. I don't know. Is there
transition?
Is there any that? But also just like there's transition. I'm sure there's a team to transition the office, but just sort of like a hey, let me tell you kind of what from my experience. These are the things.
Well, Bob was fabulous about it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the norm. Maybe it's more common, but in the case of me and Bob, he set up this incredible transition. I met with all the different units, and it couldn't have been better, smoother,
kind of the way it should be,
more positive. Yeah. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And then I took advantage of him again, because that's the kind of guy I am, when I became the chair of the Southern District when Obama was, because Bob had been the chair statewide. So he was kind enough to sit down with me and go through a lot of what their process had been and what the way they handle things. And it was a huge, huge help. So it makes a difference, at least getting into the first couple of months. But I think long term, when you have that kind of transition, it's just better for everybody, because the office is very attentive to who's going to come in and be the boss. Because you're not only talking about the U.S. attorney, you're talking about division chiefs and just a lot of positions that are affected by it.
Yeah.
And those of us who cherish the Department of Justice wonder about things, but hopefully it'll be okay.
It'll work out, yeah. So I'm curious, how was that transition for you, going from private practice to now this quasi-political, it's not really a political position, but this more administrative position or public position? How did you find that transition? Was it a challenge?
Going into the U.S. Attorney's office?
Yeah. I mean, you weren't going to try cases.
You were a firm, right? And now,
you have such a fabulous staff.
Yeah.
I mean, some people have suggested, the office can run itself. And I don't think that's so. And I think there are different, people will have a different emphasis in any position. But, to some extent, you could describe it as more a leadership position than, because you've got administrators that are not attorneys that are great at what they do. You have a team sort of managing AUSAs that do a lot of supervision. So you get tremendous support. And so it's not fair to say anybody could do it, because it's very important. And there are differences in judgment and differences in administrations and differences in philosophy. When I served, Janet Reno was the Attorney General. The messages from her office were a little different than before or after. And so you're also, at the same time, you're trying to establish some priorities. As you see things, you've got an attorney general whose wishes and priorities are going to be respected. We were coming from a time of the Medellin cartel, and the office had been heavily focused on all kinds of levels of drug dealing, including the most serious and awful in the world. And at the same time, there are other challenges. And so when I was there, we were starting to realize what an incredible level of scamming was going on with healthcare. And there's, of course, those cases continue.
Still today.
We didn't stop at all. But there were plenty of examples of storefronts that were billing Medicare. And you walk inside and there's no patients and hardly any equipment. So it was at a level of brazenness that was astonishing. And so we continued with cartels. The Cali cartel was the principal focus during my time. And then at the same time, transitioning to healthcare fraud. And I think U.S. attorneys' offices will always believe they have an important role with respect to public corruption.
Sure, one would hope. And then what about the going back? So you had your term, you served, 6, 7 years?
Served from 93 to 96. Going back was Well,
Yeah.
we had the word humbling.
Yeah.
So
'Cause now you're
you go
just
from being a big boss to just being one of the people, sometimes going
Right.
to the office saying, guys, can you give my client a break this time?
Right.
So it was humbling, but what was gratifying about it was just how much you learned and all the relationships you developed. And I love going back to different events at the party where I'd see people I'd had the pleasure of working with before. And as a private lawyer, you know so much more because U.S. Attorney's Office doesn't just deal with criminal cases. They deal with a full gamut of things. And I think they've been further engaged on immigration. There's also a civil dimension to healthcare fraud that they're very involved in. And so I got exposure to a lot of things that gave me a couple extra ideas about approaching cases. But you know, you just come out with so much respect for the institution of the Department of Justice and U.S. Attorney's Office.
I'd be curious if you have any insight for our listener. You're a private practicing lawyer. You had sort of your methods, you know, you've learned, you kind of grew as a lawyer and litigator, and then you go into this position as a United States attorney, and then you go back out as a private litigator, private lawyer. What do you think changed about you and your approach to the practice as a result of your time as a U.S. attorney?
That's a great question. You know, one thing that happens in the process is you simply have a broader appreciation, maybe even just for the law, but for the role of government agencies. You realize that they have immense power, sometimes power you don't even see. And that's, from time to time, that's helped me a lot. We were dealing, you know, we're sort of battling with the FDIC, for example, and obviously a very important public agency, but having sort of been on their side of some things was helpful. And the FDIC has their own lawyers, but pretty much all the federal agencies had some encounter with the Department of Justice or the U.S. Attorney's Office, and sometimes the U.S. Attorney's Office directly represented federal agencies, especially in the immigration dynamic or in a range of cases involving Cuba. And the policies about Cuba have changed quite a bit from different U.S. attorneys and different administrations. When I was there wasn't an aggressive level of prosecuting Cuban freedom fighters unless they seemed to be dangerous. And if they were just trading in the Everglades, I don't think we were coming after them too much just to make sure they didn't get in the boats and nothing dangerous happened. That philosophy can change from time to time, and it has. So, but I think anybody who's been in that office, well, I'll just tell you this story. I don't think he would mind me quoting him. I asked Michael Moore. I said, look, you've been director of the Marshal Service. You've been the United States Attorney. You were in the Northern District of Florida. You served in a lot of different capacities. And which was your favorite job? He said, being an assistant United States Attorney.
Really?
And I think it's because they're very complete lawyers. They have huge responsibility. But AUSAs are like the baseball player that can hit, can field, can
five tools, right?
Yeah,
they got tool player.
That's a good way to put it. Because they have to do everything.
They do.
They don't have, well, this is the person who writes really well. No, you got to write your own stuff. So anyway, but that was, and he meant it, and I think he meant it.
Cool. All right. Tell us about the formation of your firm, Coffey Burlington. I know there's been a few iterations.
Well,
but
a few iterations.
Had you started that before?
We started in
Before?
78.
Yeah, okay, right.
No, I started in
you
Greenberg
started,
at 78. 88.
88, okay.
And there were 3 of us from Greenberg, I along with Bob Burlington and Rudy Aragon, and a 4th former Greenberg, I think he'd been a partner, named Greg Martin, and we sort of split off. Kind of the classic model of a lot of firms back then. And I guess it'll always happen, but you know, groups of friends that like each other, that want to work together, one day decide they want to be their own bosses and give it a try. And I encourage people to do that, including a couple that have left our firm, because I think for people who work hard and are good at what they do, there's basically no failure rate. I think kind of everybody who follows that model works hard, you know, networks, does the thing that we all know we need to do, but they always succeed.
Right. If they work hard.
They work hard. No. I'm a big believer.
I can tell you, as a bankruptcy
work.
attorney, they don't always succeed. Right?
Well,
we've seen a lot of them.
But the ones that work hard, that do the things they need to do, network. I mean, you guys are such a great example of all that. But I don't think they fail. And so when people are contemplating jumping off the ledge like that, I say, look, just be ready for at least a couple years, maybe a couple decades of just working really hard, and you will succeed.
Yeah.
Right.
How committed are you, right? I mean, how committed are they to the process, to being successful? Whatever that means. It's not necessarily a dollar amount. It's whatever it is. And that that will inform you to work hard to get to what you need.
Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be strategizing about business development all the time. What's the key to that? And, I know there's no single answer, and it's a collective of different strategies. And, frankly, doing a really good job on your cases if you can. That helps a lot.
That's helpful, yeah.
Very helpful.
Yeah. So you have now it's Coffey Burlington. How long has it just been?
It started out as Coffey, Aragon, Martin, and Burlington.
Okay.
And then over the years, some transaction. Actually, Bob Burlington was the constant throughout the life of the firm, and he continues to be the managing partner.
Yeah. So it's you guys, Coffey Burlington. Obviously, you have a lot of other. How many lawyers you guys up to?
Well, we're
now?
20 lawyers.
Okay. And you, as you mentioned when you sat down in here, your office in the Grove has always been in Coconut Grove.
Yeah.
Which is unusual, especially back in 1988, right?
More good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually were looking at another building, and then we asked, when can we speak to the realtor? They said, well, she's at lunch. She'll be back in an hour. And, what is her name? Well, she was a daughter of Mel Greenberg. So we thought, well, maybe this isn't where we go right now till we've got everything kind of worked out. And we chose another building, which was Office in the Grove. You remember that?
Yeah,
it's a kind of fascinating, funky building with the wood carvings and everything. Yeah. And we were there for a very long time, and then Kaufman Rawson took over the floor, and we lucked into getting basically the same space where we are right now, which I'll call the GDC build-out. It's had a lot of names, but it's the building across from Monty's. I guess it's the First American now. Yeah. So it's been great, and we love the Grove.
And so you started this firm, and then 5 years into it, you said, "Hey guys, I'm gonna step away to go do this, but I'll be back," or what's how do you?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Not at first, because you don't want to commit somebody else,
right?
And you want to be careful because you may have cases with the firm,
sure.
And as it turned out, we did. One of the SunTrust cases, if you remember that, David Paul.
Of course.
But my partner Bob Burlington, and also Jeff Crockett represented a guy named Chris Berry, who was a financial guy with David Paul. So there were a couple other things too. So you don't really want to have a pending relationship outside of the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so I actually came back in 2008. So I was with another firm for a while, just doing some different things. And very, very got lucky again, because here I am back with Bob and a great group of people.
Fantastic.
So if there's young lawyers that are out there, aspiring lawyers, can you give them a couple of tips of things that you've learned along the way? Obviously, the practice of law has evolved, and the economy, everything has evolved. Everything is different than it was when you were a young aspiring lawyer, or we were young aspiring lawyers. But there's some things that hold constant, right, in order to get to the point of success. We've talked about a couple of them. But what if you're a young lawyer and they're contemplating commercial litigation, being a prosecutor, what is it that you would tell them? A couple of things that they could take with them, some nuggets.
Well, I'll hit a couple because again, I still have the pleasure of teaching some law school classes, so I try to talk about that. Yeah, and I tell you, I believe that nowadays the state attorney's office and the public defender's office give you the best opportunities to really, really get trial experience and develop your personality, your craft, and your presence in a courtroom. So that would be one thing. If you're interested in litigation, think about that. I would also say, yes, business development is important, but the best thing to do is do a great job on your cases.
Hone your craft.
People have to find what works for them. Some people, I was encouraged. I mean, I asked Mel Greenberg about bar activities, and he said, well, if I was a litigator, I'd want to be president of the Dade County Bar. So I pursued that. And so different things work for different people. I think some people are good writers, and maybe they should write a couple things and get some things out there. What I try to encourage people to do is find something that works for them, that they stay with, and not try to spread that. Don't be a joiner. There are a couple of organizations whose work you believe in and, good sources of networking, go for it. But just to kind of join a bunch of different organizations doesn't make sense. And there are a couple characteristics that I talk about in the classes. Obviously, they hear about ethics and integrity all day long. Yeah. And the last thing they want to hear about it is from me again. But I'll tell you, folks need to understand that there isn't like a 3-strike rule when it comes to attorney ethics or things like that. And if you're in a big firm or even not such a big firm environment and you're the associate and somebody wants you to do something that's shaky or questionable, you're the one that's going to get thrown overboard if things don't lay out very well. So it's really got to be zero tolerant, even if people think you're annoying and not a team player and things like that. One of the qualities, first and foremost, integrity, the other things we're talking about. But I say that really stay focused on task. If clients say you are relentless, that's a good thing. Yeah. If, hey, I called him or her last week, they didn't get back to me. Clients don't want to hear that. They want to know, I got a hold of them. And I don't want the word relentless to seem unkind because it doesn't have to be. And we're not, in a classroom, but if we were, I would tell the duck joke that illustrates my point about relentlessness. And it's a joke that Bob Josephberg, the great Bob Josephberg, used. So maybe someday we'll have a chance to do it. But the point
Wait, we're not going to do the duck joke? Can we just do the duck joke?
Gotta do the duck joke.
Yeah, let's do it. Can you do it?
Can we do it?
Yeah, language
No,
is not a barrier
language is
here.
okay. She works in our office.
No,
She's good.
but I'm saying she seems like an incredible person.
She's
Don't do it.
No, she is. She's very credible.
And just for the record, he's looking at Christina, seeking guidance, and
Christina's
she's saying,
blushing right now. She's blushing right now.
She's nodding. Yeah, we want to hear the duck joke.
We want to hear the duck joke.
It's not funny necessarily. I thought it was funny, but it makes it funny. So the duck goes into the bar, asks the bartender, I'm just saying it fast, speed joking, asks the bartender for a gin and tonic. The Josephberg would tell it so much better than I could. And the bartender says, get out of here. You're a duck and you're not getting a gin and tonic. The duck comes in the second day and asks for a gin and tonic. And the bartender says, look, you come back and I'm going to take a hammer and I'm going to take a nail and I'm going to nail your little webbed foot to this wooden floor. And the duck shudders out.
That's not very nice.
That's not nice. It's not.
It's a bartender.
That's the bartender. The duck goes in the third day and says, and the bartender says, what do you want here? What are you doing here? And the duck says, I'd like a hammer and nails. And the bartender says, I don't have a hammer and nails. And the duck says, okay, then I'd like a gin and tonic. The point I try to make is relentlessness, but knowing the limits.
Yeah.
So
I think that's perfect.
I think that's a perfect.
I agree.
Perfect place to land this plane.
I like that.
That's great.
Well,
I like that. We need to know our limits. It's great. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thanks for including me.
Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you to the listeners. If you really want to show us some appreciation, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to the show and send it to your friends and family. Tell them to subscribe and tell them to leave us a 5-star review only after they listen.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Kendall.
Christina, thank you.
Brett,
Jeff, as always. Thank you.
Man.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @Bast Amron.